Good evening. This is the September 28th, 2022 meeting of the Walpole Conservation Commission. Just as a point of interest, due to some advertising issues, the hearing that was scheduled at 7 will be done at 7:15, so we'll do general business until 7:15. So, we don't have a quorum.
Oh, yeah, we're missing members. Where is everybody?
You didn't hear from anybody?
Just Bailey.
Oh, yeah, just Bailey.
Bailey's not
Bailey
coming?
said she wasn't coming.
You wouldn't come? Okay, well, we don't need to vote on anything yet.
Well, you don't have a quorum to hold a meeting, so.
It's not typical.
Wait.
What is there to discuss?
Can we do anything?
No,
No,
because you can't open the meeting.
You
Should
can't open the
Stephanie
meeting.
email the three of them, just to make sure that they're,
well, we know Bailey's not coming, but
I know.
Emilio, Doug, and.
this is very unusual.
They got the agenda and all that.
Oh, my goodness,
It's funny, I
yeah.
didn't even notice.
You can email them
Haven't heard anything.
Okay.
and just say, hey,
They know, because they've confirmed.
Yeah.
I confirmed quorum like last
Okay.
week, so.
Someone's
here we
coming.
go.
Oh, here's Doug. Yay.
oh, good. Does this give us a quorum?
4 is your
Yep.
quorum.
Oh, good.
4, yeah. Okay, we now have a quorum. Okay, so, we have minutes from, September 14th. Someone want to move those? Want to move the minutes from September 14th?
I had one little correction that I already made, so yes, I'll move those.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. 400. We now have 5. Okay. Told you we should go with a clock on the wall.
Just become by the clock on the wall. Yeah, actually, so.
Okay. So minutes are done. What other, we have no correspondence, other general comments?
Well, the only correspondence, which it include, is not on the agenda, but that's okay, it's just correspondence, it's just the letter that we discussed in regards to the request for amended superseding order of conditions, DP 3151233, for the Burns Ave, the residents of
Okay.
Burns Ave. So everyone got a copy of the letter that I sent
Okay,
in response to the application.
to the application. Okay.
Yeah, and the only other thing I brought out in addition to what you guys talked about last meeting is the application did propose to alter, I think, like 1,300 of the non-degraded riverfront area. And the plan where they were altering 4,000 plus the non-degraded riverfront area hadn't been changed. So I brought that out, that they had a plan that needed to be updated, and that they were proposing to alter some degraded riverfront area when DEP had already said they couldn't.
Okay. So nothing else on the correspondence. Anything, extensions? All right, we got a certificate of compliance.
So the certificate of compliance is for 28 Grismill Lane, which is in Wisteria 2 subdivision off of East Street, DP 3151236. And it was for a pool, and it's in, and it's completed.
Okay, so everything's okay with that?
Everything's okay, if
Good.
you would like to issue that.
Does someone want to make that a motion?
I'll move that.
We got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
There's a signature page.
So we need to sign, okay.
starting 15 minutes late because of a notice wasn't sent out exactly right. So we're good.
And the other request for certificate compliance, which is for Summer Street Board and Estates, I'm still waiting to get the information in compliance with all the conditions as required from Wall Street Development.
Have we got any response to the request?
The response that I received was that he was still working on the as-built and the information.
Okay. Okay, so anything under general business that we need, conservation land, anything?
There's really no updates on any of the conservation land issues. We haven't received any additional gifts. I don't have any updates on the Pinnacle Trail. Dean isn't here. And as far as the stormwater erosion control bylaw regulations, I am still working to go through the edits and get those to town councils before giving them to you guys for further discussion. So I'm hoping of getting it on the agenda for the 10/28.
10/28
Yep.
is the target date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing how slow 15 minutes goes when you want to take a break.
So Main Street, no sign of a field trip?
No, not yet.
Nothing new on 1900 Main Street?
No, nothing new on 1900 Main Street.
Okay. You had any more inquiries recently on?
No, I haven't.
Looking at that?
I haven't.
Okay. Burns Avenue, that's basically, we sent him a letter, right?
I have
about-
not, I have not.
About the, that we want, he asked for, what did he ask for, 90 days, and we told him we want a report every 30 days. So is
Right.
that going out?
So I haven't sent that out because I've been playing phone tag with town council because I wanted to talk to them first.
Okay. So we're waiting. Okay, the other two, West Street's on later.
Yeah, the other two,
1342 Main Street, what's that? Oh, that's later, okay. So, any other general
Pinnacle
business?
Historic Mill, that's probably not going anywhere, right? Pinnacle Historic?
yeah, I'm sorry, I had already, I said, and I don't have anything new on the Pinnacle Trail or
the historic.
or the historic mill. No, I touched base with town council on that just to see if he had any idea when we would get a decision. And the answer was, he doesn't know. They just get to it when they can, and they're backed up because of COVID, so.
We're waiting on the court magistrate, whatever,
well,
to do his review, right?
The administrative judge for DEP, for the, I can't remember the acronym, it's mediation, something. The judge, yes, we're waiting for
So
that.
the ball's in his court till
Right,
he
yep.
comes up with something, there's nothing
Right, they're gonna be
happen.
reviewing the information that's already been provided in the summaries and make a decision.
Okay.
Just waiting for them to get to it.
Howdy.
Oh,
Sorry I'm late.
good, maybe we can have
He can do a report.
I was watching on the TV.
Soon,
Doug, I don't need, I got it all. Okay. Thanks to
You have
Steph.
4 minutes, you can do a
You
master
can do a
plan.
report. You got
I know, I
5
just, I
minutes.
missed that. I mean, I heard everything, Pinnacle Trail, you guys were talking about, no update on the master plan.
Aw,
They were
come
doing
on,
the reports, we're
Dean.
very close.
Didn't they just have a meeting? Oh, that's right, and you were here.
I was here. I gotta follow up with, Phil and the team. Getting close. I think it's very close. And we're voting on, they were voting on like the finality. Oh, here he is. What's that? We're going on the finality of all the recommendations.
yeah.
Well, I have a question for Dean, and then where's it gonna end up?
It's gonna end up in a final draft.
And then where's that draft, then where's that going?
It'll be launched
Launched where?
to your mailbox.
Oh, on paper?
No, I think it'll be, yeah,
It'll
paper.
be a public hearing, we're
Yeah.
gonna reach out and present it to the
Yeah.
community in open forum style.
Oh, okay.
Anything else for
No.
Dean?
Thank you.
Tell me when we get there.
Right.
That's slow, so tell me when we get there.
I was gonna say, when you want 15 minutes to go by, it goes really slow. When you want meeting to end, it goes on forever.
Should sing the Jeopardy song.
You guys did a good job, I heard
Maybe
it.
these guys can tell us what kind of traffic they encountered.
Heavy.
Heavy traffic, eh?
I do have a question for Dean. Do you know anything more about Eversource doing anything on the gate up at, on the drive?
We could talk after, Jack, but no, I don't know.
Okay,
If it's a Concom thing, we can discuss it, you know?
could be if people get in, they go through the wetlands,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. There yet? Have you got something to read?
Go for it.
I know, I saw it on the show, I was like, yeah. It's like, also, we need to speak into
there?
these mics. It is very soft on TV, team.
I don't know, I have 7:14, but
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
Public hearing notice, Town of Walpole, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Notice of Intent Conservation Commission, according to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Notice is hereby given the intent, Town of Walpole, to install an observation dock on 144 School Street, Memorial Pond, map 33, lot 39, in Walpole, Mass. Plans are in file with the Conservation Commission office. Public hearing, the above matter will be held in person on September 28, 2022, beginning 7:15 PM. All interested persons are requested to be present. So, representing the applicant,
Good evening, everyone. Glenn Maffey, I'm here as a member of the Walpole Trails Committee, and we were approached by Keep Walpole Beautiful, Lisa Donovan. She noticed the absence of the dock that once was at Memorial Pond, perhaps when they did the dredging, but it was removed and she missed it. They do great work at Keep Walpole Beautiful, and she brought a good idea, which is that we find a way to reinstall a dock, a small, like you said, an observational dock. What we're thinking is near the parking lot, again, for fishing, for observation, for viewing, not necessarily for a kayak or canoe launch. That can happen at the riverbank itself. And we would do something similar. What we were hoping we could do was something similar to what we did at Travis Farm with the Boardwalk. I'm sure most of you have been there. We have, I think, 26 sections over there. My math might be off. I think it's closer to 19 sections. They're 12-foot sections. And we use a similar system to what they use. It's like a helical corkscrew. It's what they use to install piers in oceans and ponds and lakes. And it just screws in with a wrench, not necessarily easily. We screw in until we kind of hit the hard gravel, and it catches, go a little bit more, and it stays. It's very permanent. And then we're open to to variation on the size, but we use 12-foot sections at Jarvis Farm. I have a picture. I had to pass it around. It's the first section we put in. So you can see what it would, pass it on to Jack too. What it would look like. So we did 200 feet at Jarvis Farm, but that's the first section we put in. So you see where it meets the riverbank. We would hope to make it handicapped accessible. I talked to the building department, and they said, or the highway department, and they said they would help with the grading. I don't exactly know where it's gonna be, but wherever it is, we would probably wanna put some crushed stone and make the grading as level as possible to allow as much access to as many people as possible.
Right there.
So that's kind of where we're at, open to your feedback.
Okay. Landis?
So I helped put the notice of intent, or I put the notice of intent together for this project, so just
We should
speaking
scrutinize.
for the project as well. What you have in front of you is, so that was gonna be approximately where the old dock was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And, my thought was also potentially to have a floating dock, but if we can do helical piles, that really won't impact land underwater body much at all either. And it was approved for the Jarvis Farm, project as well, that should be fine. In addition, approximately the same spot.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Dean?
So there's gonna be two sections of the dock or just one?
Probably just one 12-foot section.
Okay.
So it would overhang the bank, probably by a couple feet, and so maybe 10 feet out into the water.
Does that helical pile create any disturbance in sediment? I don't think it does.
I don't think so. It goes into the muck, and then we keep screwing until we hit the good stuff.
It's like a big corkscrew.
Yep. What's it, how's it hold up with the ice? I know it's not a really applicable question, but.
We've had it at Jarvis Farm for a couple of years. I walked out there today to take measurements, to double check that my numbers are right, and it's in great shape. It's level, and it seems to be holding up pretty good.
No other questions?
2018, I think we put it in.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, the Jarvis Farm.
Yeah.
It works great. No other questions for me?
Actually, that was my question too, about holding up to the ice. I take care of a dock that has to be removed before the ice comes in. I'm wondering who will take care of it, the town?
I think the goal is to keep it above the water level and where the water level would potentially be. I don't have that exact measurement today. We would certainly, when we installed it, the height would be a consideration. We would not want it to be freezing with the pond.
So it's not a floating dock, it's supported on those,
My goal is to not do a floating dock. I think we are open to, if your feedback tells us that's the only thing we're allowed to do, then that's what we'll do, but I would hope to do it not a floating dock.
Anything else? Okay.
that's it.
Emilio?
No questions.
Betsy?
I'm in favor of it, I like the idea.
Good, thanks.
Al?
No problem.
Okay. I think that our approval should include either the floating dock or on the, what are you calling those posts?
Helical.
Helical
Helical,
posts?
yes.
Okay. Either way, depending how that works out.
Well, if they go with a floating dock, I personally believe it needs to be removed before the ice comes in, because that can destroy the dock and cause it to drift places where you don't want it.
So maybe a good reason not to use a floating dock.
The floating dock could be used as if somebody's gonna
Yeah.
remove it before the ice comes in. So who
Okay.
takes care of it is the question.
What was there before?
What was there before? It was an observational dock before. Was it a floating dock? I don't.
No.
No,
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 it
it
was
wasn't,
not.
it was just sort of
Some posts.
posts in the, not really secured.
Right, it
just
felt
put in.
floating. It felt a little floaty, yeah.
It was a little unsteady.
Thank you. Landis. Are the silt socks, are they still in there from the dredging work?
There is a silt sock still there from when from when they were using the staging area, I think. No, there are,
Still, it's in the
or
picture.
they were put, actually, I think they were put there when they removed the wall. I can't remember, either one.
Is that something we should remove during this project? or leave it in there? Because has it got the plastic wrap, or is it
No,
biodegradable?
well, I don't know if it's
See?
biodegradable or not, it's the green plastic mesh material, so yeah, it can be removed soon. We were keeping it there because when the wall was removed, they had to dig quite deep for the footings, and then gravel was put in that area, and then we thought at some point the loam and seed was gonna be put in, but that hasn't happened yet, so that's why they were kept there, but they can be removed.
Can we pull them out after this?
At some point, I think the area will hopefully be loamed and seeded.
Okay.
Gravel.
You said that this would be handicap accessible?
That's the goal, yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, are you going to have a railing around?
Put a railing around it,
Okay.
that would
So
make
that
sense.
would be part of the project?
Around three
Okay.
sides, yeah.
I would think it would be a good idea to do what we can to keep the geese off it. And I think the railing around would help discourage them from coming on the dock. We might have to do something else, but I think that would be, enhance the use of the dock, particularly, you gotta walk over there, or someone wants to sit out there, and observe what's going on, so, but we could,
48 inches wide at the opening. I measured at the boardwalk, it's 58 inches wide, including the railings, but 48 is the opening.
okay. Okay. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Please identify yourself for the record. Okay, hearing none. Someone want a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. 600. Okay, I think the order could be either floating or fixed dock. And if it's floating, some means to provide for removal during ice season. Or anything else? And with a railing provided
Right,
on
yeah.
the, for the dock. Okay, anybody have anything else? Okay, so we make that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. 600. Good enough, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
What do we got? Elm Street.
Trustee Glenn?
Yeah, that's his, isn't it? That's his picture there, circulated.
This is a really good boardwalk, what they did here. Good job. Awesome.
It's Elm Street. Town of Walpole, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, Conservation Commission. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, the Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given the intent of Thomas DePlacido / DePlacido Development Corporation to confirm the wetland resource boundaries at 397 Elm Street, map 24, blocks 12 and 13 in Walpole, Mass. Plans on file at the Conservation Commission office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held in person on September 28, 2022, beginning at 7 p.m. All interested persons requested to be present. Okay. So, representing the applicant,
You just need to speak into the microphone so it can be recorded
I'll
properly.
move to this.
Hi, I'm Diana Walden from BSC Group, and I'm here with Tom DePlacido of DePlacido Development Corp. And we have filed an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 397 Elm Street. And in June, several of my coworkers were out there to delineate the resources on site. We flagged the boundaries of the existing resources, and then we worked with Tom and his engineer and surveying collaborators, United Consultants, Inc., to make sure that all the appropriate boundaries and offsets were established for things like buffer zone and riverfront area. So there are actually quite a lot of, well, I guess just to explain the existing conditions, it is a single-family residence with several outbuildings and a tennis court and some previously disturbed, gravel paths and other features like that. And so there are quite a few resources on site to tell you about, with the largest feature being Turner Pond. So we flagged the inland bank of the pond, which is seen here in blue, and there were just fairly small pockets of bordering vegetated wetland associated with the bank of the pond. For the most part, the bank topography is pretty distinct, but in a few small areas where the topography is a little more level, there are these small pockets of wetland vegetation. So the other feature to note is that there is a perennial stream that runs parallel to Elm Street on the opposite side of the roadway from the property. And that was noted on USGS as perennial. USGS does not show the stream crossing the road and coming onto the property, but USGS Stream Stats does, and obviously, in actuality, it does as well. So it flows parallel to Elm Street, crosses the road via culvert into Turner Pond. So we have the banks, or the mean annual high water and the top of bank of the stream flagged. That also had some associated bordering vegetated wetlands. And then we also have the FEMA flood zone AE, the 1% annual chance of flooding, 100-year flooding, bordering land subject to flooding, also known as all those features. So that has a base flood elevation established at, I believe, 146.8 according to the FEMA information. So using the contours picked up by ground survey, they established the flood zone along that orange line there. And then per the local bylaw and establishing a 100-foot buffer off of the furthest landward feature. So in most cases, or all cases, that was the FEMA bordering land subject to flooding line. So per local bylaw, we did establish the 100-foot buffer zone off of that, and that runs here along the green line. This blue is the 200-foot riverfront area off of the bank of the perennial stream here. And then we also, this being Walpole conservation land on the other side and not part of the parcel, but knowing we had to establish the effects of that onto the parcel, we picked up some points along the bank and along a bordering vegetated wetland on the other side of Elm Street with a handheld GPS unit so that we could project the 200-foot riverfront area and the 100-foot buffer zone onto our subject parcel. And so I believe the resource areas were reviewed in the field with Landis, and my coworker was one of the delineators. And I don't think there were any changes recommended to the boundaries, and so this is the plan submitted, and we were looking for the commission to issue an order of resource area delineation.
Okay, thank you. Landis?
Yeah, I did go out there and walk the resource areas. And the only issue that came up and I noticed afterwards that the 100-foot buffer zone you have off of the floodplain, according to our bylaw. So we had a little discussion in the field regarding the buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone off the bank of the pond, or the 100-foot buffer zone off of the wetlands. I observed wetlands along the edge of the pond. So we kind of talked about that in the field. If there was wetlands on the edge of the pond, the 100-foot buffer zone would go from the wetlands on the edge of the pond. But our conversation was, well, because there's bank also, there's a 100-foot buffer zone from the bank.
Yes.
The only thing I'm bringing this up, if you're just saying the 100-foot buffer zone you have on the plan is just from our bylaw.
So
There would still also be a 100-foot buffer zone from the edge of the pond.
Correct. But I guess just to represent the protected area, the furthest extent would be off of,
Unless it's a filing that doesn't have to require our bylaw. So that's why want to make sure it's understandable that
Floodplain.
there's a 100-foot buffer from the edge of the bank of the pond, which does have wetlands vegetation. I understand what he did is, he saw some wetlands that went inland a little bit,
yes.
and that's the wetlands line that he put on the plan.
Question it
But
doesn't move onto the property.
the 100-foot buffer that you have on the plan is just from the floodplain, but that's not a state jurisdictional thing. The state jurisdictional would be the 100-foot buffer from the edge of the pond.
Or the wetlands, whatever's further, right?
Right,
Exactly.
the bank or the pond, or the wetlands. Which I still think the wetlands goes the edge of the pond, not just in those little areas that go in and out. But we can I mean, I think we're all in agreement with the resource areas, it's just what they're necessarily all called on the plan.
The wetland line that's shown on the plan is from what?
So, on the plan, so if you go up where it says FEMA floodplain zone AE, there's wetlands flag W1-100. So he has a wetlands line there, and it's where the wetlands vegetation went out further than the bank a little. And then it ends at 106. And then he doesn't have anything between 106, and then he started another line, which is 200 to 202, because there was a little bump out of the wetlands. And then see even further down, there's W1300, which is just 3 flags. But-
Which, the 100-foot buffer zone shown on the plan is from where?
The 100-foot buffer zone that's shown on the plan is from the FEMA flood zone, is interpreted because of our bylaw, kind of says that. It does say that.
Okay, so actually,
So there
it
was,
could be the furthest from, the furthest point of whichever makes it the furthest point. Is that, whether it's the
the only
flood zone
difference
or
would be
the-
under the Wetlands Protection
Right.
Act, this buffer zone is not correct. Because there is,
Okay.
under the Wetlands Protection Act, there is no buffer zone to the FEMA floodplain.
So we need to make that distinction of
It would be-
what we're approving.
Well,
Okay.
so I mean, and what I observed is there is wetlands vegetation that goes all along the edge of the pond. It pops out somewhere, he's got the W1 flags, and then he just has the bank flags, but I would almost continue along. It would be bank and bordering vegetative wetlands. But,
There can be wetland vegetation within a bank's limit of a pond, like there
Yeah.
can be. So we just wanted to get the furthest, most.
right, and that's what we
Yeah.
came, right, so we came to an understanding between the two of us in that, so it's fine the way it is, it's just the distinguishing between what is jurisdictional under the bylaw and what's jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act with a buffer zone. That's really the only issue.
We could, we could add an additional line
Yeah,
to this plan.
Yeah.
You know, and have a 100-foot buffer zone per Walpole bylaw, and then something that's probably, I don't think it would be too much further towards the water, but it would maybe be a slight bit towards the water. And we could do a second 100-foot buffer zone, Wetlands Protection Act buffer zone, if that makes any difference.
does that make, I think it would make it clear. I mean, we've had so many 40Bs come through here, not to say that's what you're doing, but just to make it clear.
I would think it would be helpful to be noted on the plan.
Yes.
What,
Yeah.
what
What the
distance,
100-foot buffer
where, what it is determined from.
Yeah.
And be on the plan, so, that, so.
Right, so I think her
comes out.
suggestion is good, that just, you can state this 100-foot buffer zone from the floodplain is jurisdiction under the bylaw, and then just put another line from the wetlands line and the bank flags being well
So you want,
inspected.
so we'd show both?
I'd show both.
Okay, all right, that should clarify, okay. Anything else then?
No, besides that, everything looks fine. It has a very distinct, as you can see on the plan, the grades go down right to the edge of the pond, so the line is very distinct. The existing tennis court is basically a fenced-in forest. It's not really distinguished as a tennis court very much. And then the wetlands area that's shown here, the W2 series was fine. So everything else I agree. And I know they measured off the wetlands on the other side of the street and the boundary of the river from GIS coordinates, and that's fine, because it's pretty distinct.
We did actually pick up handheld GPS
Right.
points, right? And so they're within some meter accuracy to
Because it was off-site, but it affects the property as far as the riverfront area, and a little bit of the buffer zone.
Okay. Dean?
No questions?
Doug?
No questions?
Media?
Questions.
Okay, Betsy?
No questions.
Al?
I'd like to make sure that whoever's looking at this property understands that this existing path exists for a reason, and it was part of the agreement when we sold this property to the owner of the house. So,
Oh, Al, this is, I don't know if that's the same house you're talking about. This is the Turner House, Elmcrest, where Roger Turner grew up.
It's not,
So-
it's
So
not,
this is not,
oh,
this is not
okay,
over here.
okay,
that was on the adjacent property.
okay, sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay. Okay, so subject to the notation on the plan of which, and the addition of the other, this would just be the 100-foot buffer that is of concern, right?
Yeah, they just need, they're put
Okay.
200-foot buffers on the plan, one
Yeah.
they mark out as
Okay.
bylaw jurisdiction.
Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments, please identify yourself for the record.
Laura Garrity.
Yeah, Miss, you have to come up and speak into the microphone just because there's being recorded. Thank you.
Hi, Laura Garrity. I'm in a butter. I live at 11 Elmcrest Circle. I also am a member of the Town Ponds Committee, and I do have some concerns in that Turner's Lodge sits right about here, and it's utilized in the winter by hundreds and hundreds of children throughout the town, and we provide clear ice for them, so we are doing different methods during the evening when people aren't on the ice to clear the ice. We also have lighting out installed so that kids can skate at night and adults. And we also play music, and I'm not sure what your intent is here and how that might affect the years and years and years of fun we've had skating and swimming and boating at this
Excuse me,
particular.
can you speak, you need to speak to the.
Sorry, I'm not sure what the
Into the
intent
into the mic,
is
the
here.
microphone, the microphone.
I'm not sure what the intent is here, but I'm not sure if it would affect the years and years of enjoyment that hundreds and hundreds of families from Walpole and surrounding towns, how they would be affected, and vice versa.
Okay. This application is just to determine the wetland line. It has nothing to do with any sort of activity that might go on the property. So your concern, I can understand, but until there's something proposed for the property, that would be the appropriate time to bring that up.
Okay,
So
so
this
my
is
only
the-
concern would be whether or not I agree that this is proper.
Yeah, this is strictly the identification of the wetland line.
Okay,
At this point in time, that's what this application is about,
okay,
okay?
very good, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, someone make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so, 600. So we will issue the paperwork. We need a revised plan, so you get that to the office, so then we can complete the paperwork, okay? So we need to sign anything for this?
Well, so you closed the hearing, so you're gonna make a motion to accept the wetlands resource areas as shown on the plan, or someone?
As
one of
revised,
them?
as revised. This, we're
Right.
getting,
I thought you
What's-
just closed the hearing, didn't?
We did close
well,
it.
we just
Okay.
closed the hearing, okay, so now we need to issue the INRAD.
Right.
So,
Make a
subject to revision of the plan as noted. Okay? That's all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys
So
gonna
make
vote?
that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 600.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone has the revised plans. Everyone has the revised plans for Rustic Road.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the revision.
There's nothing to read, it's not a public hearing.
So this is. Rustic Road. Okay, this is a continuation of the notice of noncompliance for 100 Rustic Road, which we opened at our last meeting. And we'd asked the applicant to give us a comparison of what was on the original plan as it was approved and what is there today. I would like to note at this point that I know the abutter has some information that he wants to present to the commission, and we'll have that opportunity when we get to that point. Okay, so go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rich Leslie from Bay Colony Group, representing the Sawyers. And that was one of the things we were asked to do, is to show the pre-construction and post-construction contours and grades. The other thing was that we were asked to show the pool plumbing and the electrical services from the pump and how it went around the pool. When we plotted all of that stuff, the plan just became way too crowded. It was extremely difficult to read. So what we did was we broke it into 2 sheets. So the first sheet you're looking at, sheet 1, it has the existing structures and it has the proposed structures, proposed being the fencing. It also shows proposed landscaping, where the ground cover is going to be, some trees. And when we did this, what we noticed on the southerly side of the property, in plotting the fence down in that location, we realized that there was actually an encroachment into the 25-foot no alteration zone. That encroachment is about 346 square feet. I met with Landis last Thursday reviewing this plan, and what we've come up with is, when it comes to putting the fence in, it'll be staked out by a land surveyor, so there will not be any permanent structures in there. The fence will be outside of that. The other thing we came up with, she was concerned, there was an area that, toward the very rear of the property where that silt fence is now, where we're showing the new outlet for the foundation drain. From that area to the stream had been altered. She had said there was tire tracks, and, I have photographs of all of that. And so what we came up with is, okay, we'll rake and restore that area and plant 10 native shrubs. The area of restoration, which is all outside of the 25-foot no alteration zone, is about 1,158 square feet, so almost 4 times the area that we altered. And in addition to that, she required that we put a no alteration, add another sign, a no alteration zone right there, kind of near the property line, to make sure that this never happened again, that they didn't go past it again. So the other thing that we were asked to do was the fence, the markings of the no alteration zones, the signs that were used are not in accordance with the town standards. So all of those signs that are depicted on the plan will be in accordance with the town standards. So that took care of the first part. The second part was page 2, which is the pre and post grading and runoff direction. So the pre-construction is in red, and the post-construction is in black. As you can see, the runoff, the direction is exactly the same, which is what I said last time, post-construction as it was pre-construction. It's all going in the same direction. Again, with the riprap barrier, there's no silt, there's no siltation going past that. It stopped everything. And there should be no, we've had at least 3 significant rainstorms since we've taken this project in a month, and there's still no siltation there. There was a comment made that at the 100-foot buffer zone, where it intersects the northerly sideline, that's where the 5 feet of fill is. In regards to the 5 feet of fill, it's not 5 feet and then drops. It's 5 feet at its highest point. By the time you get down to the 94 contour, you're hitting original grades. So it starts at 5 and it's sloping down. So what we did was we went out, we staked out that property line. The first point number 1, is an iron rod set. That iron rod is where that point is actually underneath the pine boughs. You see that orange bean pole in the picture. That's where the property line is. And it's looking back down the property line to point number 2, which is circled in red on that first photograph. The distance there to the closest point of the riprap, the bottom of the riprap is 10 feet, more or less. Then if you go to point number 2, that point is where the 100-foot buffer intersects the property line. From that point, you're looking down to point 3 in the back, which is circled, and the distance there to the bottom of the riprap is 8 feet. To the top of the riprap, where the fill is 15 feet. And then if you go to the final one, the final point's where you hit natural grade, it's basically 4 feet from the edge of the riprap. If you look at all the photographs, it's all original vegetation. Nothing has changed. If you look at the pre and post contours, they're basically on top of each other. It's a natural swale. It was before and it is today between the two property lines. They both come in and it flows westerly right down to the rear of the property. Nothing has changed in that area. And I think we've addressed everything the concerns that you may have had.
Okay, thank you. Landis?
I don't really have anything in addition to add. I worked with the engineer on suggestions for his plan, since they did go a little bit into the 25-foot no alteration area, so I suggested the planting area. The signs, which weren't correct spec signs, they agreed to, they will replace them. As well as put that additional sign, so that it brings the no alteration area up a little further. So every suggestion that I made is included on the plan.
Good. Dean?
There are no questions. Thank you.
Doug?
No questions.
Emilio?
I think it looks good. I think you incorporated what we asked for, so I don't have any questions.
Okay. Betsy?
Yeah, I think that the pre and post contours matching so well is convincing, and also the idea that there was a swale, natural swale before, and that there will still be one channeling water along, seems convincing on this plan.
Al?
Well, I guess before I get into this, I'd like to hear what the abutter has to say.
Okay. Okay.
He did show the connection to the pool filter that I asked for. I hope it's accurate in case somebody has to dig it up.
Okay. Okay. So, anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Please identify yourself for the record. If you want to come up to the microphone, please.
I'm Bill Hayford. I'm the abutting property at 104 Rustic Road. I've got a couple pictures I'll share just to, from my perspective on how this matches up.
Okay. Good.
And I'll pretense, although feelings aren't part of this, I'm not comfortable being here. I certainly have no ill feeling and hope they enjoy, but I also feel uncomfortable about the final landscaping. That's why I'm having these concerns I'm putting with you. What you see on the first picture, which shows you the original approved plan, and you can see there in yellow.
Yeah, just address it, and you need to keep on the
And
microphone.
you can see in yellow on that is the area that is above planned grade. Some at 1 foot, some at 6 to 7 feet deep above grade in the middle of that area. So you can see that the original plan that was approved shows around the house so that they can get their full basement, so they can get their pool, so they can get their driveway. Every revision, very happy about it, enjoy their property, is then surrounded at 103 with a quick drawdown to 99 feet, and then follows the normal grade out to the borders. That's the same grade that's existed since 1780, where the former house, the old farmhouse, lived. It's the same grade that's been there since my house was built in '68. So that's the way that it was proposed, to limit the impact and the changes inside the buffer and also to the abutting property. That's a plan that I find perfectly acceptable. The plan as it changed, once we got the pool up, and you can see where the pool is, was supposed to draw down on the back of the pool. That's not what's going on now. You don't see that, but what happens at the back of the pool is now a very large 1,000-foot pool deck that then extends at 103 to 4 feet, right back to where you saw that picture of the filter that's right on the edge of the 25-foot. Now, you already heard on the other side, the uphill side, that they've gone into the 25-foot. There's also incursions back on the creek into the 25-foot, where they were warned when they first started construction. They were cutting trees down back then. They were asked not to do it. They ceased. They stopped doing it. And now at the end, it's, okay, we didn't know, and we just happened to bring in over 500 cubic feet of fill that supposedly the grade is the same and it's the same. Then why do we see, as you page through, a 4 to 5 foot riprap barrier down the property line if everything is at the same grade and is going the same way? It's not. It's all shooting towards my property, where it'll be hidden behind a 6-foot privacy fence on the top of that 4-foot riprap, giving you a nice 10-plus foot barrier within the buffer zone that no animals, no vision, nothing can cross that riprap, nothing can cross that fence, and the water will generally run right It always ran a little bit right. It'll continue to run right, but harder to the right and find its way back to the creek. None of it's going to find its way into the wetlands. So you're depriving the same water that makes the wetlands by the general contour is shooting to my yard and out. I've lived there for 13 years. I know how the water shot before. I know how it is now. And if you look at the swale, I know this isn't your concern, but that's my one concern. As far as outside of that, I don't see any need for any of this. It easily could have stayed with the original plan. There's no need to sit there and bring all that fill in there and do any of this work. It wasn't approved. To come in later and ask you, why don't you let us do this? We'll never do that again. I don't know. There's a pattern of scope creep on this. And what do we be, what happens next? I don't know. But there is a swale now. If you look at it, it starts at 103 at the pool. It goes to the point of the garage at 102. It goes from the driveway at 104 to the point of that garage at 102. That 31 feet is right uphill from my house. That's the one swale they got there is shooting right at my foundation. I know that's not your concern, but that's another problem where I say, hey, you get stormwater, you get hit with a hurricane like's happened in Florida, that's where the water's headed, right towards my finished basement. So I have concerns both outside the buffer for my own home's integrity, and that's why I'm standing here, not because I want to give people a hard time, not that I don't want them to enjoy their pool, their home, their nice, beautiful new home, or their driveway, but I don't see that any of that fill is necessary to accomplish that, and that's why the minimum footprint was presented and approved to this board, saying we'll allow you to go into the buffer, we'll allow you to go up to 103 so you can have a pool because the water's down there. I just don't see the need for their enjoyment. And I certainly think it takes and impacts the wetlands, and it impacts me in a negative fashion. That's what I got. Any questions?
Anyone on the commission?
Can the engineer tell us whether there's a net change to?
We can answer the question. Anyone? Dean, any questions?
Sorry, sir, what was your name? I'm sorry. Bill. Bill, we've had a bunch of storms recently. Have you noticed any difference in your property?
After the first storm, I saw that above the riprap where the soil was, it started to split. Even the fence guys say it looks like an earthquake started, so that's started to split.
No, on your property.
On my property?
Yeah.
Since storm, yes, I've had water pooling next to my fireplace on my house, which is right down that swale I told you. So I put dirt and I put down what I had available to me at the time, a log, to divert that water away from the side of my house. So that I've seen. Back in the other area, this was bone dry drought time. Almost all the water from those storms has gotten absorbed. The creek hasn't even started to run yet. That creek runs full in the spring. So you didn't see anything, you know what I mean? We were dry. That got soaked up.
Thank you. No more questions.
Doug?
Not at this time.
Video?
Not right now.
So we're
Okay,
asking questions
Betsy.
of the abutter and not the engineer?
You want to ask the engineer
Well,
question? Go
no,
ahead.
yeah, I mean, because to me, it seems as though the engineer made some points on this plan. The abutter feels that they're incorrect, that there's gonna be more net flow coming onto your property.
And I think
it's
that
not gonna be going
difference,
back.
we can point that you draw down gently here, but I think when you see pictures, you understand there's a significant change that's happened outside of plan. That's my point.
Okay, that's why I guess I thought the engineer could respond.
You want to hear the response from the engineer? Would you like to make a comment?
Again, I did not say that the grades did not change. The grades did change. And no, there weren't 6 and 7 feet of fill there. There's 5 down to 1. What I said was the direction of runoff is the same post-construction as it was pre-construction. And we're not talking about impervious surface. We're talking, right now, in the split, there's no ground cover. It hasn't been loomed and seeded, there's no grass, there's no stabilizing plants. So sure, you could see it during a heavy rainstorm, there would be some movement of silt across, in the same direction it was before. My point is that it was totally contained by the riprap. the photographs in front of you, there is absolutely no indication of any silt going anywhere near the property line or even across the property. Now, when this is fully stabilized, when you have grass and groundcover plantings out back, which is allowed in the public zone restoration area, the runoff is gonna be minimal. It would only happen if the ground was so saturated that the rain was coming down, that the grass couldn't soak up any more rain. And now it would follow the direction it always followed. I didn't say the grade would change, but the direction of flow is the same. When you get down the swale, there's not a swale here, it's a consistent slope. It's a consistent slope away from the foundation, following the previous contours. The swale is at the bottom of the riprap, and that's where you take a look at them, where the post and the pre-contours are on top of each other. Nothing has changed within, at the closest point, 8 feet of the property line.
Okay. Anything else, Betsy?
Is there an aesthetic thing going on here that's concerning you?
Well, when they put a privacy fence on top of that riprap, yes, that is a barrier, not just a Sesley. That means 250 feet of my border is within the 100-foot buffer, meaning it's part of the wetlands. That's going to be a fence sitting there 6 feet on top of 4 feet, and that's just a barrier that I think that I would expect when I moved into my property. The wetlands are protected. I'm not going to have a castle and a moat between me and the wetlands when the border actually lives on my property as well. So yeah, that's aesthetically not pleasant.
So the thing is that we can't actually address aesthetics on
Right,
the
but
commission.
I
But
wasn't asking.
we could suggest it's the sort of thing that neighbors sometimes sort out, like, what's the fence gonna look like? Do I need a fence? Do you need a fence? What are we doing?
It's the 12 feet, you can't go through it. The wetlands, the animals, the habitat, you see the whole circle there of the removed foliage. That's why there's no foliage there. It was removed outside of plan. The mature trees were all taken out in the buffer.
Can I just point out that the fence is not in the wetlands? The fence is
In the
not in the
buffer.
wetlands.
And the buffer is the natural habitat which the animals move through, and they won't be doing it anymore as soon as that goes up.
I'm just clarifying that there's no fence in the wetlands, and
It'll go right along the 25-foot buffer, yes.
Okay. it's not even doing that, but, and, sorry.
One at a
I think
time.
the commission was having some comments.
Anything else, Betsy?
No,
Clarifying.
it's okay.
You good? Al?
No, I haven't been.
Can I just
Okay.
point out one more thing?
You're okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just also wanted to point out that, so the original plan and this plan also includes roof infiltrators. So with the,
And those are part of the certificate of compliance.
right, so let me just finish, please. So the previous house, I'm assuming, did not have roof infiltrators. So the rain that hit the roof went into the roof leaders and then flowed out over the surface, maybe towards the butter property, I don't know. But any of the water that falls on this roof and this garage will go into the ground. So that's less overland flow
I
than
appreciate that,
previously
because there's
was.
significant
I'm
more
sorry,
roof.
I'm still talking.
Oh.
That would be less overland stormwater flow than before. And that's the main point I wanted to
My
bring up.
apologies for interrupting. I thought you were trying to inform me by your eye contact, so I tried to respond. I'm just saying, yes, significantly more roof. And so the planning board did ask them to put the water into the ground. It's still putting hydrostatic pressure in that same ground. The water's still there, but it's going into the ground. The old farmhouse did not have that, no. Didn't
Right,
have
so
the
it'll
square
go in the
footage.
ground, it won't be overland.
No,
Wow.
it'll just go into the water
Yeah,
table,
exactly.
which does cause hydrostatic pressure on my foundation.
Those infiltrators are installed, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Just my observation from looking at the plan, and I appreciate the way you did this to clarify that basically water is running in the same direction that it was before. So you may have had an issue before, but at the border of the property line, as is pointed out, that the existing contours and the pre-existing contours are matching up. So water always did flow in that direction, so appreciate the way you have presented this. I think it's helped to clarify the issue. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. Okay, what,
Just had a question.
Yeah.
That riprap strip that you have along the side, that was not part of the original, this riprap that you have along the side, that.
No, this is that was the original erosion control right there.
Right,
That
and
was the
then you-
original limit of work / erosion control.
And then you went on to.
And this is the area.
Which is why I was bringing up aesthetics. It's not an attractive riprap, I gotta say that. But that's not our purview, we're not about aesthetics, but it's the sort of thing that neighbors can get together about. Do we need plantings? Do we need a really nice fence and put in a place where it won't be, because it's not that attractive. But that's not our purview, whether or not the boundary is attractive. But I'm hearing you that is one of the things that's concerning.
originally, the request was whether they would have to file, I think we settled that last meeting, didn't we? Whether this would be, we have to do another filing, or this would be
Right, a minor modification or
modification.
formal amendment. I think you guys just voted to do a minor modification.
Okay, so that was settled at our last meeting. And this was to clarify issues that have been brought up by the butter. And I think the applicant's engineer has presented information that is, to me, resolves that issue, that basically the water flow would not change now compared to what it was before. So, anyone have any other comments they want to make at this point?
So Chairman, just to clarify, the minor modification would be in the plan that was presented tonight, September 23rd, 2022, with the variations on the plan, and they work with the conservation agent on the plantings in the restoration area.
Good, I think that, and there is requirement for that to be conformed to, so I don't know if we have to include anything in that, or that, because it's shown on the plan, that's what we expect will happen.
Yeah, we would just send them a letter saying the commission accepted the minor modification of this plan.
Okay, and with, yeah, okay, everything to conform to this plan.
Yeah.
date. Okay,
I did have one thing.
yes, go ahead.
Just
Just get up to the microphone, please.
And if it's not appropriate, just correctly, another downhill neighbor did want to come, but she had a call. She just wanted to express her concern for the wetlands, that we retain the original plan, right, and protected the wetlands. She wasn't able to attend because she had a work call at 6:30. That's the Redmond residents who are downhill from me. They didn't want the water flow going through my property to them. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, I think if you look at the past, the direction of the flow was kind of more of a westerly direction as opposed to, let's see, what are we doing here? More northerly, going down instead of westerly towards the wetlands. So it's going the way it has been going. I think that was the point, and I think that's been shown here with the contours as shown on the, on sheet 2, particularly of the pre and post contours, so we take, I think the wetlands are going to be there as they have been before, and that hasn't changed. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. You'll
Sure, I did
just
last
generate a letter in regards to the approval of the modification.
Thanks for doing all that work.
What do we got?
So we have the West Street violation and the Main Street violation, and I don't see the West Street people here. Here he comes, but the,
Oh, okay.
but the
Okay, all right, so,
Norfolk Veterinarian Clinic, people have been sitting in the audience for a while. So
Okay.
I would recommend taking that.
Okay, so you want to fill us in on that? This is Main Street.
So, this is 1342 Main Street. It's Norfolk County Veterinarian Clinic. And I received a call from them to come and take a look at some trees that they wanted to trim or take down because they were concerned that the tree or tree branches would fall on cars that were parked to the rear of the property. This is the veterinarian services, which is adjacent to Cumberland Farms on Main Street, Route 1A. So I was somewhat familiar with the site, and I went out there and, I remembered when in 2007, it was permitted for an addition and some pavement to the rear of the property. There's a stream, which is a perennial stream to the rear of the property, and wetlands. And what I saw was, it looked to me that an additional parking area had been extended from the edge of the pavement out towards the wetlands and the riverfront area, using stone dust along the rear of the property and the side of the driveway. And I came back to the office and pulled the file and looked at the order, and the order of conditions that was issued in 2007 for the addition showed a plan with a limit of work. The order of conditions referred to conditions for no further activity to occur within the riverfront area, for an area to be loamed and seeded, and for 20 plants to be, shrubs to be planted. This appeared to be part of the area where the stone dust was and the cars were parked. The 2007 plan as well as the 2010 certificate of compliance, these conditions were carried on through the certificate of compliance. Also showed a plan that had 6 parking spots on the property, 2 in front and 4 along the edge of the driveway. And the aerials, I went back, looking at aerials back to 2015, and noticed around 2016, when there seemed to be a change somewhere between 2016 and 2019, I think, where it looked like the parking area was extended and cars were starting to be parked to the rear of the property, up against, within the riverfront area and where the shrubs were gonna be planted. So, I issued a notice of noncompliance on September, issued a notice of noncompliance, or notice of violation on September 19th, asking them to stop parking the cars to the rear and to come to the commission, and that, the bit concrete pavement shown on the as-built extended further towards the wetlands than the original plan, encroaching on the no disturb area. Looked like there was stone dust was placed along the edge of the area, within the area which was supposed to be loamed and landscaped, and the activity was in violation of the order of condition and the continuing conditions, 18 and 19, which said not to go into that area and to plant shrubs. So the notice of noncompliance shows a picture of the current rear of the yard where they're parking vehicles, and the aerials that I have shows the progression of the change to the property. I believe the owner of the property is here tonight, as well as Mr. Mackey.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Phil Mackey, Mackey and Mackey, 1256 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts, as counsel for and on behalf of, I guess, the violator. So to start with, we agree with everything Landis said. No one is here to debate the factual issues that she brought up. I would like to start off going, this is a somewhat self-inflicted wound on our part, and though that we agree that there is a violation, it was absolutely unintentional, or at least unknowing. Normally, you don't call the enforcement agent to your property to observe a violation. And so, yes, the stone dust is, as far as I can tell, we haven't been able to retain an engineer at this point, but I agree with Landis. It certainly looks like, according to the site plan, it's in the wrong, not only in the wrong place, shouldn't have been there. We would like the opportunity to take a look at the site and the parking. I'm going to ask Dr. Poor to give you a brief overview of her business. Again, we're not here to debate something needs to be done to fix the situation. I talked with Landis, and specifically there's a parking issue with the veterinary practice, which is outside the purview of the Conservation Commission, but that is what the genesis of the violation was. And the first thing Landis suggested was, can you park in your neighbor's parking lots? We have temporary agreements with 2 of them, so that we can comply with the notice not to park in the back, but those are handshake agreements, and I don't know that those are gonna be memorialized going forward. We're gonna certainly try, because that would be clearly the best. But if that doesn't turn out to happen, we'd like to take a look at the site and see if we can come up with a, whether it's a new filing, a modification, and certainly this board can vote yea or nay, and then if you vote nay, then we know everything's coming out. And again, the issue to my client has nothing to do with the Wetlands Act. It's just the practicality of having a veterinary practice there. And so, with your indulgence, I'd like her to say a few words, and then we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Christina Poor, 1342 Main Street. So I apologize if I'm going to be a little lengthy, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. That's a building that has been on that road for, I think, greater than 100 years. If I had to go and look for a place to build a veterinary practice, that wouldn't be it. But nonetheless, the practice itself has been there for 40-plus years. I may be off a couple. I go back into this history for a reason. So my family's been going there as clients for going back 35-plus years, and I started an internship there in 2001. And I say that because we have always parked cars back there. Starting with Dr. Headley Marks, he'd park up against the wall, I'd pull in next to him, and some of the employees. Clients have always found places to park. We've always done so safely. We've never had a problem, never had an incident with an animal getting hurt or anybody. And I think part of that is because it's just had always sort of been done. I apologize, didn't think much of it. In 2007, I was not the person who put in the application for extension of the building. I didn't even own the building or the practice. Dr. Marks himself did that. I guess had come in front of the board, not myself. So I have to say there's no apology for this, but I was ignorant of exactly what it entailed. After I bought the practice in 2008, middle of 8, and in 2010 realized that I couldn't do it with 1.5 people, 1.5 vets per se. I'm a widowed mother and needed to bring some help on, and grew the business a little bit, which I'm proud of. And the other thing I wanted to say is we went through that renovation of Cumberland Hills off to our left, I guess if you're looking from the road. And I had gone to a couple of meetings as an abutter, And what struck me, which was interesting, is just how filthy the property was, and still is, actually. If you go behind the wall, not where my place is, which I keep immaculate, but behind there, the amount of trash that builds up. Before, it used to be pallets when the kids would ride their dirt bikes, because there was no fence on the trail, the railroad line there. We would routinely, Headley and I, when either of us owned it, would go in, or we'd hire companies to go in and clean up the stream and clean up the wetlands. And to this day, it still is a daily endeavor, between the trash that comes off the road, the trash that goes over the fence from Cumberland Farms. So it's frustrating, and part of the other reasoning is, yes, it helped with the parking, but it allowed me to better upkeep the property, to move. First, it was gravel, and it actually was done. I was pregnant with my daughter. That would have been 2011. We had put some gravel down. It was my husband and my uncle. And it just made things easier for both the staff and the clients. And I guess that's why it happened. We recently had a couple of trees kind of split in half, I guess, and fall, one onto the parking lot. It was overnight, so we weren't there. So that's what prompted us to call. I served on an open space committee in West Boylston for about 2 years, so I like to consider myself a friend of the wetlands or the environment. My house happens to be in a wetland, so I get it. I don't fertilize. I don't do anything that's harmful to the properties. And I guess I just want to keep the place up. Unfortunately, we don't have as much parking as we need. I do have an agreement from the gentleman, Joe LaRusso, across the street, and the pediatric office next door, but it's for 3 spaces. And at any time, they can say if they think it's getting too much, or their tenants don't like it, they're going to say, no, I can't do it anymore. I guess if push comes to shove, one of my options will be to close the business, either altogether or move it to another town, because there just isn't anything on this strip of street that is available within reason.
Can I just add something?
Is that anything else? Are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Landis?
So I understand where you're coming from. You're saying you didn't quite understand. But I do want to correct for the record. The addition was built in 2010. It was built by Complete Development Corporation. I received a letter from John Desmond, which was CC'd to you. Dr. Christine Poor?
Christina, yes.
Yes. So the start of construction notification was CC'd to you. In 2010, June 24, 2010, you were the applicant for a limited site plan review, which I understand is under the preview of the building inspector. And in that, it states that the applicant is seeking approval to allow the 16 by 24 addition to the rear of the existing veterinary clinic. The proposed addition will not add to the runoff of the site. There are 6 existing parking spaces that will remain, and no new parking spaces will be added. So, and then there are some other conditions, the last one being an existing order of conditions shall be extended by the Conservation Commission and proof of same submitted to the building inspector office. So perhaps you didn't understand that having a limited site plan review and only being allowed to have 6 parking spaces, but there shouldn't have been cars parked to the rear, because the site plan for the parking spaces is 2 in the front and 4 along the side. I just wanted to make that clear for the record. And I understand your position. I understand where you are now. I just wanted to make the record clear.
If I understood you correctly, Mr. Mackey, that you are going to have an engineer look at this and come up with some presentation
We
for us?
would like to, Mr. Chairman, but I wasn't going to presume to act before coming before your board and getting an agreement as to how to move forward.
Okay. All right. So are there any questions at this point on the board? Dean?
No, no questions,
Okay.
but I
Doug?
would like to see an engineering plan.
Doug?
No questions.
Medio?
All set.
Betsy?
Yeah, so after a little pre-meeting this afternoon, I took a drive-by around 2:30 to see, and I was surprised by something. Most businesses have painted lines designating where people park. There was nothing in the front or to the side or to the rear, and in the front, where, actually, I don't know why you're only permitted for two spaces there, so you can get 3 cars in there. There was a car just kind of, as though they were in their own driveway, just kitty-cornered across so that only that one car could park, whereas I would've got 3 cars in there. And then along the side, there was one car parked kind of randomly along your south side. I could get 3 cars in there, only if the lines were painted, though. And then, I guess, you could have parking to the north side. I didn't see it, but I doubt there are any painted lines. So how does anyone know how to even park in your existing spaces, and why don't you paint lines? And is that how it kind of got out of hand? Because then I went around back, and there were like 4 cars, maybe it's your employees, all kind of higgledy-piggledy, like teenagers pulling in at night or something. So why are there no parking lines? How do people, and then you could actually say, this is employee parking, this is client parking, this is my parking. Why not?
So interesting that you say 2:30. 2:30 is a shift change where it's not at the front. My employees are not allowed to park up at the front or on the side. I call it the right side if you're looking from the road. Forgive me, I don't know the directions, but, so there were lines painted. Originally, when the lot was paved right at construction, lines were painted. I did not keep up with them.
Because you could go to planning and just say, why do I only have 2 spaces in front? Couldn't it be 3? Why don't I
Right.
only have 3 spaces down the side? Couldn't it be 4? It looked to me like all you gotta do is, it's planning board's job.
It's not planning, it's a zoning issue. I believe.
Zoning, sorry.
Building
Zoning.
inspector.
It's zoning's, why 2 in the front and 2 down the side and 2 on the other side? And then why not paint the lines?
Right.
And then possibly if you were in a real bind, and I'm speaking just individually, because I'm on Concom, and parking's not my jurisdiction at all, it's weird to talk about it at all. Maybe butt up against your building, you could put another space in the back, even though originally that was not gonna be part of the plan. But the idea of then, I think what's sort of, you sat through a couple of, some hearings of ours, because of the time. You see how obsessed we get over resource areas. That's all we do. And so when we see gravel in a resource area, we get kind of excited. We don't get that excited about parking, but I just made some suggestions that just seem so totally obvious. Maybe go to zoning, get a couple more spaces in a legitimate place and paint them, number them.
Okay. Yes, Al?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. I would think it would be pertinent to give us a plan of what you intend to do, and I think you could request, could possibly enhance your parking area with some, would you have to go back through the building inspector, well, that's go to zoning, but whatever their requirements are. It seems like parking is the big issue. And whether you could get permission from your abutter to use any of that area for parking, you could, again, I think there's some things you could do. In any event, you do have to adhere to to our requirements that it doesn't conform to what the plan that was submitted. So that needs to be corrected. If you're just gonna stick with that plan, then just go ahead and do what it showed originally. If you wanna make changes, then you're gonna need to come in with us what those changes are.
We would like to get on your agenda probably 2 meetings out, because I doubt we'll have anything in 2 weeks.
I guess we're looking at
Or whenever's
what
available.
type of
So
filing would have to be
Well,
done. I think part of it
to-
depends what you
to-
wanna do.
the issue is you're both in the buffer zone, you're in the 25-foot no alteration area, and you're in the riverfront area. So the riverfront area, those are all state-regulated resource areas. That's not, these people sit here and decide what the regulations are. These are state regulations. If you're altering within the first 100 feet of the riverfront area, you really can't do it. You're not supposed to do it. You can alter the first 100 feet for stormwater management, or if it's previously developed riverfront area. So you'd have to show that that area where the gravel is, which before was supposed to be loamed and seeded and planted, was previously developed. Maybe it would be able to change. You have to, if you're working further into the first 100 feet of the riverfront area, you have to show how you're conforming to the regulations.
Understood.
Big bar.
And I'm not suggesting
Or-
that this is a slam dunk by any means.
No, I know. I just want to be clear,
Yes.
because if it's open-ended, just show us the next plan, and you come back with what you'd like to do, and that's not permissible, you're gonna be in, it's not really gonna fly. So
Understood.
if the straightforward thing would be to go in and pull out the stone dust and restore that area back to the riverfront area, which was what it was supposed to be. So that's what the plan should show. If your intention is to do additional work in the riverfront area, then it would be something different.
And should you go before zoning?
It's actually,
More spaces.
it would actually be a full site plan. As soon as land is provided the limited site plan, I know why they said 6, because at that point, that was the threshold beyond which you couldn't have I had nothing to do with this at the time, but I've been around for a bit. When she filed for a limited site plan, at that point, if you had more than 6 cars, you had to go to the planning board. So the building inspector's hands were tied at that point, saying you can only have 6. So to your point, Ms. Dyer, we probably do have to go back there if we're gonna change anything in a meaningful way. And so we're here to address the violation and hopefully come to a solution that works for everybody, but I suspect we're gonna be in front of the planning board with a site plan going, okay, we now have parking in different places. And clearly, I wanna go through this board first, because everything Landis just said, I hear and understand, and we gotta make sure, regardless of what Walpole says, that the riverfront's adhered to, wetlands, et cetera.
And the area behind the retaining wall from Cumbies, it appeared that part of the pavement and the parking is occurring on the Cumbies land. That was area that the commission required them to restore the riverfront area back there and to plant trees and shrubs. So they had the same requirement that this property had as well. Restore the riverfront area and replant.
And I believe that part of our order of conditions was that they police that area to keep it
Yes.
clean. If they're not doing that, then we can address that with them. But that is a butter is the Cumberland Farms?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we can check that out and bring that to their attention. Okay, do you have any questions on your end?
I think it was pretty clear that we've got some work to do, and the bar is very high.
Okay.
And we'd like to try and meet the bar. And as I said before, if we don't, we get it, we know what has to happen.
Okay, thank you.
When are you expecting?
I would suggest 2 meetings out, because I think that's reasonable, but if your schedule is packed, or I don't know if we've already hit the holidays, then we could go further, but 2 weeks from now is
28th,
probably
so
out.
what do we have, the 28th of,
October.
26th of October? What is it?
The 26th.
26th. Do we have anything on for that meeting?
Nothing scheduled, but we do have one so far.
Okay, so that would, if that's, fits your timeframe?
I
I'd like
think
to
so.
see. They have to get information in, I don't know, how long does it have to be in?
You'd be up against a pretty close deadline, of not next week, but the following for that meeting.
Could we have the week after that? I'm only saying that is
For what?
because to
If
engage
they
an
knew-
engineer and
if they
have them
were
draw
gonna-
anything meaningful for you is gonna be more than a
We-
2-day process.
So I think what Stephanie was referring to, if you were filing a formal notice, then you had to, if you had it to advertisement. What the commission can do is, since they seem to be wanting to work with you, is to issue an enforcement order and to at least start the process under an enforcement order. So starting the process of what to do with the violation. And then if it turns out that you need to file with the planning board site plan review, then you can file a formal filing after that. But I would address the enforcement under an enforcement order first. So if you want to keep I would keep the 28th, because I
Okay.
think we need to keep this moving, personally, is what I would suggest. Keep the 28th, you come back addressing the violation.
Sure.
And if you need to file with the planning board with site plan review, then you need to change something that you need to meet, the standards of the act, then you should do a formal filing. But let's get through the violation part
Okay.
first. Does
Sounds
that
good.
make sense?
Did you want to give it a time?
Yeah, let's give them a time.
Um,
7:15?
Perfect, thank you very much.
Okay.
That's
So-
on the 28th, or 26th?
26th at
26th of October at 7:15? Okay.
So I recommend the commission vote to issue an enforcement order. I put the paperwork together and direct them to
Okay.
address the violations.
Want to make that a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. 600. Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Landis?
You can just leave it on the table. Yeah, you can, actually, you can keep that if you want. Go ahead, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, Chairman, you want to do the Main Street,
This easel list.
I mean, the West Street?
West Street, 965 West Street.
Okay, so, 965 West Street, another violation. Sorry, I'm mixing up my violations. There's too many of them
Is it the
tonight.
red folder, Landis?
Yeah,
Is it
right.
stacked today?
There's two red
This is a stacked red folder.
Okay, so this is adjacent to the site of the landscaping business that
Yeah.
the commission just recently permitted. And when I was out there on a site visit, I noticed these boardwalks that were created through the wetlands. And the history, I'd been asked about that Michael Freiberger, sorry, I already messed up your name. I'm just gonna call you Mike. Wanted to put in a running path, and I thought that was a pretty non-invasive thing to do from his house around the property. But when I observed the extent of what was constructed out there with the boardwalks, it went a little beyond what I would just verbally approve for anybody to do. And told them that it was too much and that I would be eventually issuing a violation notice and that they should come forward filing with the Conservation Commission. And then one of the last times I was out there to look at the site work for the property where they had cleared everything for the landscaping company, I kind of observed that it looked like from the mud tracks on the boardwalk that it was definitely not running sneakers. It was tire tracks of some kind. So it seemed like it was being used more for not just running. And so that's when I put the violation notice together. Scott Henderson sent this plan this afternoon, which shows the extent of the path and the boardwalks and where they're located.
All right.
And you can add anything you want to that.
For the record, Scott Henderson of Henderson Consulting, the project civil engineer for the nursery project that you saw us here before recently. Again, similar to the last discussion you just had, we don't contest any of what Landis has said about the scenario here. I think Mike had discussed with Landis taking what was an existing path, sort of, behind the house for orientation. You're familiar with, this is where the nursery driveway comes in, the nursery site. This is the subdivision line between those two properties, and this is Mike's house. You can see the house here on the far right side of the plan, his driveway coming in. There was always an existing path through here. I can attest to that when Mike had first bought this property. I'd come out here with him to take a look at it. And then he asked about upgrading that pathway. Had that discussion with Landis. I think at the time, Mike was unfamiliar with the details of the Wetlands Protection Act and local wetlands regulations. He's now very familiar, and especially in going through the nursery process. And so, never trying to hide that this was the case. I think we walked the site with Landis, walked you through, that pathway. And Mike put in a few, we'll call improvements to what the path that was there, some of which are a little more extensive than what would be typically allowed or maybe allowed at all inside a wetland. Stephanie, can we switch to the other plan? This is the same plan, just zoomed in a little bit. Somewhat easier to read. There are 3 areas shown on the plan. There's a legend here on the right-hand side. There's a green outlined area of the path. It doesn't have any hatching inside. That is just a dirt pathway that's always been there. That was unchanged, but still used in part of this, what we'll call the path system. There's the red areas with a red dot hatching. That's where Mike put crushed stone down, like 3/4 inch crushed stone on the existing ground surface. There was no surface grading redone, merely to stabilize. Those are sort of muddy areas going through buffer zone and through the BVW pockets that are on the property. And then the blue hatching illustrates where there are 5-foot wide wooden boardwalks. Those are boardwalks that were built, put on cinder block footings, again at grade through the path, and then the boardwalk was built on top of that. That is certainly something that, when I first saw it, I also wondered exactly how we had those permitted. Did not, again, I don't think Mike was trying to do anything wrong. I think this is a miscommunication, and we're here to sort of discuss how to remediate that. I just got survey from our site surveyors late last week and just had a chance to put this plan together. So I don't have any more detail to show you on exactly how these were built, but I can say a few things. One, no earthwork done, so it's not like Mike came in there with an excavator to build up a path or anything like that. It's not like a railway bed type of thing where you increase the ground level or anything. These all sit above the ground surface, the boardwalks. There was no additional impervious area, so what's been done hasn't caused any additional runoff to the site or within the wetland. There's no groundwater or surface water impediment, rather, within that wetland pocket. Those boardwalks sit above grade. The crushed stone is on the surface, and so there has been no change to the hydrology, and no trees were taken out to do this, as far as I understand. And so Looking at the local regs and Wetlands Protection Act, I don't have an analysis for you tonight on whether or not this is permittable under those regs. If it is permittable, sort of how, any of the potential impacts have been abated. And so what we'd like to do is maybe schedule for the next hearing in a couple weeks. I can come in with a more clear assessment of the condition of the site, and whether or not we're going to remediate by removing these completely or try and, after the fact, file a notice of intent to permit what I think it was intended to be a recreational use of just sort of a portion of the site, which includes some wetland. Not looking to clear or anything. With regard, and the last item, with regard to using the boardwalk and having tire tracks on that, I am guilty of one of those sets of tire tracks across. The longest stretch of boardwalk is through here and connects Mike's house to the construction site for the nursery. Had a small ATV that I used to bring material over there to do soil testing. During the permitting process, we were looking for a pathway to get our excavator to the site to do the soil testing that was required for designing stormwater management for the nursery. We had two options for getting to this area to do our soil testing. It was coming off of West Street. Mini excavator needs 6.5 feet of horizontal clearance and 12 feet of vertical clearance with the boom to be able to get through this area. We would have had to cross two wetland pockets that have a cross slope and remove trees to get from West Street to here, whereas there was an opportunity to go along this wetland line and along the north side of this boardwalk with the excavator through the wetland to do that soil testing. We did discuss that, me doing that. We didn't have to take out any trees. However, those tracks did tear up the ground surface in the wetland. Something we will come back with is a planting plan. We have a wetland replication plan as part of the nursery project. We are going to produce a comparable one. We'll engage Russ Waldron, who did the wetland delineation for the site, to look at that and do whatever plantings are necessary to get that back to square one. I do want to make clear again, no trees taken out as part of that. It was our only way in, and we thought it was the least impactful. So, I guess, moral of the story, nothing was intentionally done here to cause any violation, and we'll come back to talk about remediation for that equipment that went through, and then try and look and see if there's a framework for permitting what has been done for the paths, and if not, we'll take them out. Anything to add?
No, mainly like I said, sorry, I lost my voice. I had COVID recently. The boardwalk that you probably saw the tracks, we've been trying to manage the silt fence for the nursery side of things because they've been taking trees out in stumps. So we kind of went across them with the ATV for the silt fence reasons. So that picture you had sent that day was probably from those guys running the silt fence material through there rather than going down West Street.
Yeah, it was right where the break in the silt fence was too.
Yep.
That's what I figured.
Mhm.
I mean,
Anything else you want, just, the pictures you had showed a little more activity on each side of the boardwalk.
Yeah, like I said, we went through there on that side with the excavator to do.
The picture definitely showed the north side, this stretch through
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I presume, I haven't seen the picture, but I'm gonna guess that's what it goes out.
right, it was, right, so there was a cleared area adjacent to the boardwalk you just pointed to, which they used the excavator. They took the excavator through there for the soil test.
That
Correct,
was the
yeah.
reason, okay, all right. Dean?
No questions. Looking forward to your analysis.
Doug?
No questions.
Emilio?
So you said you were familiar with the Wetlands Protection Act going through this process. What part of putting boardwalks and crushed stone in the wetlands did you not understand?
I'm familiar, Mike wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I wasn't involved in that, so just
Okay.
to be clear, I was not engaged. I showed up well after the boardwalks were there.
Okay.
So,
You know,
believe me,
without- But you were present though, so you you understood that the wetlands.
yeah, when I got there, I questioned Mike about it. I think we-
Mike knew somewhat about the Wetlands Protection Act because I was out there when you built your house. and you did some clearing and
So this goes above and
filling and
beyond what,
grading,
Yeah, no, it's definitely beyond whatever, yeah, no, 100%.
right?
Yeah, like I said, the gravel and stuff that we added in there, once we kind of built walking areas through there, neighbors more or less fell in love with it, and then there was some muddy areas, and I don't know why we did it, but to keep mud off their shoes, we put some gravel in there, and then we built the boardwalks going across, again, to stay out of the mud, and then it kind of evolved between digging the test holes and then bringing silt fence back and forth. The biggest area is the one that you had talked about, is the north side of that bridge that had been kind of cleared through, which we've talked about, obviously remediating. But besides that, that's really the only access that comes through with machinery was from silt fence activity.
The Wetlands Protection Act does make clear allowance for exploratory soil evaluation and whatnot, so that.
I understand that part,
Yeah,
but.
yeah, the boardwalk part, yeah, no,
The other hundreds of feet of stuff.
I think part of it was a I mean, I know Mike knew about the Wetlands Protection Act because prior to the boardwalks and the landscape business, you built your house and you put in additional fill and grades and stuff like that. But I think it was sometimes people have conversations with me and they ask if they can do something. My answer may be yes, but in my mind, it's yes, if you file an application.
Is it possible?
So I think there's probably a miscommunication of what could be done without filing and what needed to be done filing. And clearly, once the boardwalks, I saw the boardwalks, it really requires filing to do the extensive work that is out there.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Which they agreed, just when.
I think it would be pertinent to come up with some idea what would be allowable for this path.
If we're still going around, I had a
through this.
question for Mike. Are we still going around the?
Sorry, I
No,
interrupted them.
we had.
Okay.
Oh, did we get the?
No.
You
we
you
didn't
hadn't
get
got, oh, so go
so
ahead.
it's not- so,
Hey, Betsy,
so
go ahead.
have you ever had to reconstruct a replication area for a client?
I have not done it, no.
You've
for
heard
this-
of it, right?
Yeah, for our site
And
plan.
someone
review.
could come to you for a replication.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not totally buying, Mike, that in your line of business and with your house surrounded by wetlands
Mm-hmm.
that had to come before us, that you're completely ignorant of the Wetland Protection Act, but
No,
okay.
I agree. I understand, just as far as the extent of what a walking trail is, I think that's the miscommunication that we're discussing.
And so are boardwalks typically 5 feet? What are our boardwalks?
Where, which ones?
I'm just thinking like the one at Jarvis Farm or something.
Jarvis, I think it's, what did he say, that was 4, to 4 feet.
So why 5
Wide.
feet? I mean, were you thinking from
Random,
the
honest.
beginning, maybe you needed to get vehicles across there?
Random, honestly, no. We actually didn't even own an ATV at the time.
Okay, because it's one of the, I think it probably is gonna end up being one of the wider boardwalks in town. We can't drive vehicles on our conservation area boardwalks very easily, can we?
Not a four-wheel, no.
No. So these are pretty wide boardwalks too.
I think the one I was talking about at Jarvis Farm, I think is 4 feet wide, and then there's a railing, so that's a little bit, so the board itself is a little more than 4 feet. I think the walkway is 4 feet. I think the ones we have at Adams Farm are probably 4 feet. No more, they might even be a little less, because it was a question of cutting the boards to maximize the efficiency of a 16-foot plank. Yeah, so I forget what came up with, but it's, you're not gonna get a four-wheel vehicle on that. No.
All right, no other questions right now.
Okay, Alan, you have any questions?
No, I'm interested in walking paths and boardwalks, but I don't think they should be used for wheeled vehicles.
Well, they've got to be permitted. Even the town has to come to us. If the town wants to put something at Adams Farm, they have to come to us.
Mhm.
And that's for a much smaller boardwalk,
Understood.
Well, okay, that's
much shorter.
my question or comment at this point is what, I think, a trail, a walking path trail, we have those through various ways, and I think I can understand that's, I think what original intent was that it would have you'd have a running path or a path that would be
Yeah, that was the
suitable for
original plan, and then, like I said,
what,
the silt fence and the test pit digging. it
do
kind
we
of
have
evolved there.
any guidance to offer on what that could be?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we have any guidance from our own experience, or is there anything in there that what would be allowed as a walking path through this area? We've got path through the wetlands, and we do have other
Well, like walking,
paths and trails in town that go across an intermittent stream.
yeah, like
or
walking down to
proposed
Willett Pond,
stream.
there's some regulations about
Yeah.
how the Willett Pond folks can get by a path down to
Yeah.
the edge of the pond. And it's a certain
think-
width and it's a certain,
Well, I think some of it is also what we've done is try to keep the path high enough above the ground with blocks. So you're minimizing the amount of area that is in contact with the soil. Basically, we put a block down and put a cross piece, and then so you have minimal area for your, that's actually on the ground.
Yeah, they're also open hold CMU blocks.
So,
for the
and
support.
then you also have crushed stone in part of this, so I don't know what's our position on that. Just to give them some guidance, you wanna come back with something to show us what you're gonna do, but I think it would be helpful to you to understand what would be reasonable.
Potentially allowable.
Yeah.
So if I were to look at this from fresh eyes, there's a provision of the Wetlands Protection Act for buffer zone and riverfront work where you're allowed under 10.02B walkways that are maximum of 3 feet wide, that are a pervious surface, that doesn't require any grading within those areas. Within the actual river, the wetland itself,
In the
though-
100-foot buffer zone. That's the section,
Yeah.
when you were asking me, and then I was reading this.
But that's
this
only
is within the
buffers and
100-foot buffer
riverfront.
zone.
There's really no provision in the Wetlands Protection Act that addresses any sort of.
For
any sort of
minor
recreational
activity.
walkway or
No,
minor
there isn't.
activity.
It would be
within
an
a-
alteration.
Yeah, so within the wetland itself, it's an alteration, requires a notice of
Yep.
intent. We know that, I know that. The question is whether a boardwalk is allowed at all, and if it's not, we'll just take them out. And if there is one, and it can be 3 feet wide and elevated above the surface so it doesn't impede water or, wildlife movement, then is that something that's even
I think that's
entertainable? 'Cause
Another issue is
Yeah.
that critters can get under it.
yeah, so if it
they-
sits 6
instead of
inches above.
traveling, some of them can climb over, but there's some that would have trouble doing that. So I think we
And I
have
think
any,
there's really no I mean, all the boardwalks and stuff up at Adams Farm, none is as long as,
There's the one
These
boardwalk
are there?
that crosses the.
the last one we did, I think,
That's a
was
big
they
200
That's the Jarvis Pond, the,
270 feet, I
Adams
think.
Farm.
through a wetlands.
But that's not.
Well, it's not all wet, it's,
Well, that's what I mean. This is,
It's,
but in other
probably would be
towns,
considered, it's wet. We put it in because it's in a mushy area, which is probably, you look, the vegetation around it, it probably is, but it's, all of it, the area, I'm gonna say it's a 6-inch wide, maybe 2 feet long block that we put down, and then a cross piece, and then you can put your stringers on there, so you're above.
Yeah.
So the impact to the soil is minimal.
Just a block, yeah.
And the pictures here, it looks like you're almost on, you don't have much, now you said you put a cement block,
Like a CMU concrete block, so it's
Is
like
that a
16 by 8 by 4.
8 by 8,
Yeah, same thing they built at the fire station. out of-
4 inches high,
I think it's 8, and then we turn them on the side, and then
Those are sunk in though.
so you're how
They
high,
sink in,
is it, how high up above, is it an 8 inch?
probably, if that.
Well, if you're asking how far the bottom of the boardwalk is
Yeah.
from the ground surface, I imagine it's only 3 or 4 inches.
And that's, I think, again, I don't know what and then we got gravel, which I think also, I mean, if you're making a path that, where you can use that, makes some sense.
I think-
Boardwalk makes sense, but how is it done? And I think that's what I'm suggesting, in some way, we get information to them that would be acceptable to us.
My plan at this point is all crushed stone that's within a wetland limit to be removed, right? So narrow that, any path improvement with crushed stone to buffer zone. Qualify that under a minor activity in the Wetlands Protection Act. But yeah, the open-ended question, there is no real understanding or guidance on boardwalks and wetlands. Many years ago, I did an Eagle Scout project with that, but it was 2 feet wide,
Yeah.
you know, and it was a time when no one really paid attention.
Okay, there
It's
are-
better to have something there than not, and I don't know, one of the issues we have, just using that as far as a reference, is bikes. And if it's wet, you make a mess,
Yeah.
as opposed to foot traffic.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get bikes in, and then you get other motorized bikes that come in illegally, but they're there also. So this is trying not to make a mess out of things and try to improve what's actually there. So what do we have any guidance?
Well, okay, I'm gonna say that there is guidance out there, because when Trails Committee has come before us for various boardwalk plans, they've cited other towns' successful boardwalks. There's a huge one up in Andover, so definitely hundreds of feet. All over Cape Cod, I think it's the Cedar Swamp one, it's hundreds of feet. So it's not like no one ever does them, but they came and did their diligence to talk about how to do a proper boardwalk, and we permitted them. And they were citing other towns, and they got the idea of a certain kind of boardwalk system with corkscrews, not saying that's what you gotta do, but, so there is guidance out there. It's not a complete mystery how to do a boardwalk.
Okay, there's precedent nearby. Audubon has boardwalks that are miles long.
Yeah.
Okay, and when I pursued that in Norwood, one of the things was they had to be high enough and the boards had to be spaced enough so that light could get under and vegetation could grow under the boards, as well as the water and the critters, okay? I noticed in the regulations, it mentions private boardwalks, and it doesn't elaborate what the difference between private ones and public ones are. And I think that we're assuming that this boardwalk is a private one owned by this house and this business. Now, there's ways for this boardwalk to go to circumvent most of the wetlands, but he probably put it in through the wetlands so he could see what was going on there. So I think that, like Audubon, at Moose Hill, they have them. They go through wetlands so that you can see the fish swimming and the frogs and the turtles and everything else. And if you go quietly at the right time of day, you can see them. But, you know, and then there are some other boardwalks that Audubon has. And when I talked to them about it, they talked about the corkscrew methods of putting posts in. But they also had another method where you drove them in, that they had a device that was carried by men, and they put it over the post, and they lifted this weight up, and let the weight down, and the weight would push the post in, and they used posts other than the corkscrew things also.
So Al,
So
would you
other
say,
people have done this.
so would you say they should come back with a proper plan
Well,
to get permitted for a private boardwalk using precedents from boardwalks that we know all over the place
well, I don't know
that
if,
are correctly done?
I don't know if DEP would approve of a private boardwalk this long through this much wetland. That's the question.
So when the question keeps coming, do we have guidelines? I don't know of anywhere that has boardwalks that are quite this long through a shrub swamp. There is Jarvis Farm that goes quite a ways, but that's a different kind of wetland system than this, and it's on those helical pilings that are set up high above everything. So I think the direction would be, yes, is a violation, what you have out there is in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act. You either have to take it all out or file as soon as possible, showing that it can be permitted. That's up to, it's up to you guys,
Yeah,
really.
and that's, yeah.
To meet the criteria. I think the direction and the regulations regarding private and public is for boardwalks in the buffer zone. So, yeah, it's
right.
30 inches for private and 3 feet for public.
Recreation,
And it's a minor project if it meets that criteria and it's not in a resource area. So you're in a resource area,
yeah.
which means it's not a minor project, which means you have to file a notice of intent, and you have to show that there's not gonna be any impact. And I think all the suggestions that there are places that do boardwalks, if they're raised above the water level, if critters can go back and forth, if the sunlight can get in, you're not disturbing at least the herbaceous layer, even if you may be disturbing some of the shrub area, you have to show how it's, you're meeting the criteria.
Understood.
Do you have
Okay.
a suggestion, Stephanie?
I do. There are neighboring towns that have successfully planned but have not yet executed wetland crossings specifically. And it's interesting because the conversation in planning was very similar to the discussion that we've heard tonight. The board spacing, whether there's light coming through, the width of the boards. The eventual plan that was landed on was something that was raised, allowed the animals and wetland vegetation to grow beneath it, allowed light through, and it was actually made of metal. There are others that are also installed in that same town on Audubon properties.
Okay.
They span over ponds, and
Or
obviously
over
they're
a
done.
hummocks, like more of a hummocky wetlands.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
And-
definitely a shrubby
Okay.
swamp.
But I think there are definitely ideas out there within neighboring towns, and I'd be happy to
Yep.
point you in that direction by
Yeah.
email if it helps.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
certainly
So
look at
show
that.
the commission how you're not gonna impact the wetlands or flooding, wildlife habitat, water quality, all the interests of the act by putting your boardwalk. The way it is now, it's,
Not doing it. Understood.
does that kind of sum things up?
Okay, all right,
If we
Good
just
enough.
pull the boardwalks up completely, because I mean, again, they were built just so there wasn't mud on our feet.
These will come out. We won't do that yet until we come back.
Okay, so you wanna come back to,
Yeah, we just need more time to look at it. And honestly, you're gonna have a wetland scientist in here with me if we are coming back with a boardwalk replacement proposal. I think it's clear that the boardwalks as are currently constructed don't meet standard. So in any case, those are coming out. Whether or not they're replaced with something, we'll discuss. Is that sensible?
so again, Commissioner, should you recommend issuing an enforcement order requiring them to address the violation, and then if they want to put the boardwalks in properly, that they would have to file to do that?
I think, yeah, that would, that would assure that they would at least start with the remediation. So, yes, it's a enforcement order. So someone make that a motion that this, we issue an enforcement order on this, and then you can work under the enforcement order, right?
Yeah, they can work on the enforcement order to take them out, remediate, and then if you want to come back on the 12th or the 20th.
We take them out now? Like if Mike wants to do it by hand now,
Yes,
can you do it?
absolutely. We
Okay.
issue the enforcement order and give you the guidance of taking them out and remediating. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And with that you don't disturb any more than already is disturbed?
Yeah, I'll do it by hand.
If they're
In the
removed, yeah,
removal?
when they're
And
removed, they'll be done
whatever,
by
however,
hand, no
whatever
equipment.
process you're gonna do.
Yep.
Okay, someone make that a
I'll do
motion?
it.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 600. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And for those of you who came in late, we covered all our other business.
Yeah, no, I watched it on TV.
They're ready.
I was just sitting at home. I couldn't get a babysitter, so I was just sitting there, and I watched it all.
Here's,
I watched you approve the minutes, and,
You thought three of you were out, having a drink or something.
yeah, we were taking, oh, I'm on TV.
Traffic
I was gonna say some,
You guys?
I'm learning.
It's funny because we were starting the meeting and none of us even noticed you guys.
No, I was on TV, and I was like, they're not starting. I'm like, why are they not starting? I'm like, oh, none of us are here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry
Visiting
about
my
that, y'all.
98-year-old mother.
You were what?
Visiting my mother.
Oh, well, that's a
Oh my
good
goodness,
excuse.
all of these are brilliant excuses.
Don't leave yet, we've got some things to sign.
Just give your kids some Cheerios and leave. You don't, why do you need to?
I asked my wife, can I just leave him in the crib and just go?
Enforcement orders.
And she's like, yeah, I'll just divorce you, so I did not do
Sign
that.
up sheets.
I was gonna bring him here,
Probably
but
not.
Do we
we're
have
trying
to
to have
sign
him
those?
sleep like, he wakes up at 5 in the morning,
I can sign it.
5 a.m.
It's always nice.
That
Haven't
sucks.
we got,
Or like 4:45 this morning.
and we got that,
Was he asleep?
No, we're trying to make
Make it
him, my little son,
enforcement,
we're trying to, he's 10 months old, we're trying to get him to
signature
stay up
or is it-
later, so he
what we got here?
wakes up later.
Two of these?
So it's like 7 o'clock, we
We-
usually
So
put him
we
down
want
at
our
6,
name
he's
printed
miserable.
on this?
So I was like, I
Sign
can
and
bring
print?
him
You wanna
here
sign,
and have
I
a
can-
miserable
I can
10-month-year-old
print
screaming
the,
at
like,
everyone.
However you are
I
comfortable.
decided not to do that, keep them up,
Now we
watch
can do
Colbert
it.
and stuff, you know.
Trying.
What is that? Oh, you did have one.
We don't know if it's working.
Not, just not numbered.
Did not
but I
work
can
yesterday.
write the number.
Oh, yeah, that's fine, yeah. I mean, I
4:45,
can
that's still
find them.
nighttime.
I like to have them.
Oh, it's dark. It's like when he starts crying, your eyes open, you're like, no. No. I thought these days were
Do we want
over.
a motion to close, or?
Well, let them finish signing.
Get everything finished first.
How's that construction going though on 965?
On what?
They've cleared the property. So they,
Oh, on West Street, yeah.
right, so they cleared the entrance, the driveway. Last time I was there, they cleared the entrance, they cleared everything. And, I had them shore up the erosion control because, of course, when the tree clears, when the stumpers, nick some of the erosion control and stuff, so I had them put in more erosion control.
Do you check on all of our orders?
Do I check on all the sites that are active? Yes.
How's the hash browns one doing?
Which one?
Hash browns?
They're hash brown on South Street. Yeah, they seem to be pretty good. They were out there,
We got that wall.
they got the wall up. I think they were getting ready to build up the building. They did have some sediment on the road, but it looked like they had swept it up pretty well, so. I go in that way sometimes.
Oh, just real slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
How'd you find out about the Norfolk vet?
What?
The Norfolk vet?
Oh, well, wait, let's close the, let's.
Oh, all right.
So, yeah, I move we adjourn. Second?
Did we get everything signed?
Yep. Anyone want a second?
So,
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're
All set.
adjourned.